So before I start this podcast, I just want to give my condolences to all the families and loved ones that was affected by the recent shootings and just pay my respects to all the lives that was lost recently. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lasting Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Digital Relaxation, and we are back again for another episode. We are on episode 44, I believe. And as always, if you guys enjoy what you hear and what you're going to hear, please be sure to share and rate this podcast and help us grow. Let's get into it. It's one of those feelings again of like, feel like it's been a while since I did a podcast type thing, but I just been chilling. But yeah, speaking of that, let's start it off. Let's talk about the what I've been up to segment first before we get into our topic. I think I got like a couple of topics. We're gonna see how it goes. But yeah, so start off with gaming. I've just been lightly gaming lately. I jumped back on Fortnite just so I can level up the battle pass. The main reason why I really came back to that season is so I could play with Doctor Strange. I joined him more so because this movie also just came out, and at this point in the MCU, he's my favorite. So I just wanted his character. But yeah, I've just been playing random games. I've been watching my boys play Dragon Ball Fighters and just been watching them fight and like instigating the lobbies and whatnot so that they can like try to one up each other. I've been fighting the urge to jump back on Cyberpunk again because I'm watching like this, well, not so much. I've been watching a bunch of clips on YouTube of like people like making certain builds and then they will like go through a mission and they like complete the mission in like 30 seconds. Like, depending on their build, is like making the game look so much fun compared to how I was playing it. Like, don't get me wrong, like the way I was playing it, my second playthrough was fun too because I was able to focus on my build more. But seeing people like really master their build and master like the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, I was like, oh god, like I want to go back and just do this again. But I don't know. Still fighting myself on it. But that's mainly it. I still been fighting myself as well on playing Resident Evil. I still need to get on that. But yeah. So going into more gaming news, actually, I believe it is official that we are not having E3 this year, which I mean, not really a surprise because E3 been slowly dying and they've been making bad decisions and stuff that been happening, other companies pulling out, and then of course COVID just put the nail in the coffin. So no official E3 showing, but of course other companies are gonna have their own shows. I believe all of them. I don't know when, but I know that Xbox and Bethesda are going to have this show on June 12th. Sony or PlayStation are going to have their State of Play June 2nd, so I guess Sony's going to go first. And I am unsure about Nintendo. I don't know if there's any date for them or not, but hopefully Nintendo and then whatever else going to reveal, whatever they're going to reveal. Probably Ubisoft usually have their own thing. EA sometimes do. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have expectations. The only expectation I want to have is I want to see games that's gonna make me like really want to get into them. Just something new and different, I guess. Cause like I'm tired of like playing the same games over and over, which is why I went back to Cyberpunk. But I do want to like start playing something new, so hopefully I can see something that's going to be exciting. And the only thing that I care about from the Xbox Bethesda show, mainly from Bethesda, is I would love to get an Evil Within 3. I feel like we definitely are like, we have the story for it. Like there's a lot of loose ends that was kind of like brought up from the first two games that we can completely dive into in the third game. So I would love to see a third game of that. Other than that, I don't know. I don't really have any other expectations. The Steam Deck has, I think the first wave has finally came out, so a few people have gotten their hands on it. I just been keeping my eye on it. I don't want to be involved in it just yet. Like, I don't want to start doing research, because I'll be getting like mad addicted to things. Like, if I like start researching it and whatnot, then I'm like, damn, now I gotta have it. And I just like keep watching videos so I can like learn everything about it before I even own it. So I don't know. I'm just gonna chill on it, because it's just the whole how it's coming out. Like, it's coming out in waves. Like, so right now, if you pre-order it, the next wave won't be till the fourth quarter, which is like around holiday season. So it's like, I mean, from where we are now, I mean, maybe not that long a wait, but still, like, you kind of, you want to buy it and get it now. So it's like, I don't know, like when it's more available, probably. I've been also thinking about just going back and getting older consoles. I to this day, I like, there's some things that like you do in life that I guess you don't like regret or whatever, or you try not to have regrets. The only regret I have right now in terms of my gaming life is I made a trade for my PS Vita, and it was a trade that in the long run was not beneficial for me. So I really would like the Vita back again, to be honest, but they're kind of pricey to get. But I definitely would like to get a Vita again. It was amazing consoles. Sony just didn't know how to support it, but it was also great for emulations as well. It was a great console, like the whole, like how it was structured and whatnot. Like the fact that Nintendo finally, like, they had to make a whole new separate OLED Switch version. Like the Vita already had that, so it was like they was already ahead of you. Like, but Sony just didn't know what to do with it. Like, they didn't put that much games in it and whatnot. There's some games on it. One game that I ended up liking a lot was Gravity Rush. That was a great game. And the second one is on the PlayStation 4, probably on the 5 as well. But yeah, like they had some games, but they didn't keep going forward with it. But yeah, I would like to own a Vita again, low key. So I don't know. Too many handheld stuff that I'm keeping my eye on. But yeah. That's other than that, I think that's mainly it for gaming. It wasn't a lot. At least I'm not keeping my eyes to the street, like trying to figure out what's going on in the gaming world like that. But yeah, so what the so yeah. So now we going into the movie section of this, which is small as well, but this was something interesting. I didn't have no plans to do this, it just happened. But I recently actually went and rewatched the entire Blade trilogy, seeing that I recently talked about it when I talked about the MCU. And I was like just watching it from like what it was, and then of course doing my comparison and what I would want for the MCU to do with the character and whatnot. But quickly, just to go through each movie. The first movie was great. I didn't even, like, these are things you don't notice until you rewatch it again. But I never knew there was this one character, minor character, but I felt like a character like him was very important in creating the world of Blade. And I feel like it was unfortunate that he was only in the first movie for a small portion of the film. Like, I think he would have been nice to have in like at least the second one. Third one kind of got weird. But this character in the first movie where Blade visits like in like a pawn shop or whatever type shop, like not a pawn shop, but like a herb shop, I guess, what you would call it. I don't know. But he would visit this person, because what he does, which they don't show it again, like in the second movie or third movie, they only show it in this movie. Like every time he fights like vampires or familiars or whatever, like he robs them from their jewelry and use it as payment to visit this one dude who knows who he is and know what he does, and he helps like give him the ingredients so he can make his serum, so he can like keep the vampire side of him like at bay. It's like, but it's like that small little thing is like a lot of world building, and I feel like that is something that should have probably, like, I don't know, like that's something the MCU version should probably do. Like, I understand they got Whistler as well, but he was more like making the guns and the machinery and whatnot. So like to see like he had someone else on the side like helping him with other things, that was dope. But then the movie just like went all into like, oh, now they just have it type thing. But yeah, the first movie dope. One thing I'll give credit to, especially the first and the second movie, is the whole not forcing no love interest or whatever. Like, you know, he don't need to be the superhero who has a damsel in distress, or no, the girl that he just fallen in love with, so he want to protect her or whatnot. Like, nah, the girl from the first movie was like, oh, she's just like, she got the hang of it real quick. Like, oh, I just witnessed something crazy and these dudes are telling me about it and whatnot. And she was like, all right, bet. And she just like became a whole badass like towards the end of the movie. I'm like, damn, she's dope. And unfortunately, she didn't return in the sequel. But yeah, Blade over Wesley Snipes' performance. Like I said, I don't like, Ali is a great actor, but I never really, like I said, I never really seen him do action scenes like that. I probably should search it up and see maybe if he does have anything, but from the stuff I've seen him in, not really. So, like I said, unless he's really out there like training and learning how to fight, because, you know, MCU just got a problem with having their superheroes throw hands for whatever reason. Like, they downplay a lot of people fighting styles in their movies. Like, I don't know what's the situation with that. But like, even if it's just to compete with like the level of what Wesley was doing for a bit, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I hope that he's out there. I don't want to see a whole CGI film, which is funny because going into the second movie, Blade 2, they was experimenting with CGI in that film. They were doing a whole lot of like animated, choreographed fight scenes, and I guess people didn't like it because I saw that they quickly removed it in the third movie. So, I mean, it was weird. Even when I was young, I was looking at it like, why it looks like PlayStation 2 graphics, like randomly in the movie. But it was whatever. It's a charm to it, I guess, like looking back at it now. But it is what it is. But yeah, so the first movie goes into, I feel like that movie, because I don't know Blade lore like that. I feel like honestly, like seeing the movies as they are now, the movie should have a movie, like a prequel movie or whatever, a movie that goes before Blade 1 in terms of the villains, because that villain was a great villain, but like for the first movie, I think it was too soon. And I guess, you know, because of what was happening at Marvel, like they were going bankrupt at that time. It was Blade, like the movie Blade is what saved Marvel and which gave us the MCU eventually. But at the time, Marvel was going downhill, and Blade was kind of like their last push to see if they can get some kind of money back, and they managed to get it. That's the reason why all of the characters are in different companies, because they had to sell them so they can stay afloat. And that's why they like, oh, we got the money now, so now they're trying to bring everyone back home. So that's the whole situation with Marvel. But yeah, so Blade was like their last push, and it did well enough that here we are now with the MCU. But where was I going with this? But yeah, because that storyline of Deacon Frost, who even in the comics, which seeing the comics, like Deacon, like the character, he seems a lot older. In the movie, like he looked like he's like Blade age, but obviously vampires age slower than humans. That's the whole thing about it. But yeah, it was just weird. Now, but like when you know the story, but Deacon Frost's character is basically, he is essentially, how do you explain that? Like some kind of father to Blade in a DNA aspect, because he was the vampire that bit his mom when she was pregnant with him, and that's how Blade ended up being born half vampire, half human. It was because of Deacon biting his mother, and his DNA went into Blade. So like that's like a heavy storyline for him to figure out. Like that would have been nice in the second movie, maybe even the third movie. I don't know if they shuffled the first and second one around, but I think a movie had to go before that so we can just establish Blade as himself, and then we get the Deacon Frost character, which is like, oh, like it's the first movie. He been doing this all his life, and it just so happened that the movie that we're watching and the one that he's following, and he been tracking Deacon Frost for a while. He says it in the movie, and to find out that, oh, he's the one who's responsible for him being a vampire. I think it was like too soon of newsbreaker. Like if we had a movie of him like doing what he does best and like, oh yeah, like I hate vampires, blah blah blah, then he finally gets to this vampire and he's like, oh, I'm the reason why you like this, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? But yeah, so that was kind of the story of the first one. Well, the first, I don't know, there's a lot of similarities between all three movies, but the first movie is Deacon is basically trying to become like the ultimate vampire or whatever. He's trying to revive some, I don't know what it is in like the lore of Blade. I should probably research that, because obviously the third movie kind of downplays whatever that first one was doing. So he was trying to, like, I guess, like I said, he's trying to become like the ultimate vampire, because the whole goal of the vampire species throughout all the movies is basically they want to create the ultimate vampire. They want, they don't want to have to keep hiding in the darkness no more and all that crap. And that's why they envy Blade, because he basically has all their strengths and none of their weakness, because he's not immune to anything. I mean, he is immune to all the stuff that they aren't. So it's like, oh, which was nice in the third movie. I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, like that's kind of like their whole thing in the first two movies for the most part. So but I like in the first two movies that they show that it's Blade, like as much as he despises being a vampire, as much as he tries to deny that part of him, at the end it's usually that part of him that helps him get the edge. Like in the first movie when they had him captured, and the female lead that was with them, she's like, oh, just drink my blood so you can get your strength back, and he did it, and that man just came back and gave us like a dope action scene, like just working dudes like no problem, like showing that he was actually even stronger too. Like, yeah. So it's like, as much as he denies that part of him, but like it's that part of him that usually helps him win fights and like overcomes the main bad guy. But yeah, so the second movie, which was a next interesting thing, where it's basically a good story. Like I said, I think this one would have been a good filler story. So I like I said, knowing what you know now, and if you was to rewrite the Blade movie, like knowing that you were gonna do a trilogy or whatever, like I said, for me, I think 4 movies would have been fine. I would have did a movie before the first movie, then I would have did the second movie first, and then I would have did this first movie third, and then I did the last one last. Obviously, story wise, not how the movie came out, because I saw the problems with the third movie. But yeah, so it was a nice filler story. It was about basically there's a new I don't know how you even word this, like a new strand of vampirism or whatever. That's like, the way that they work is that they basically are like, they're kind of like brain dead. So they constantly just feel, they basically like zombies, like vampire zombies. Like they constantly need to feed. Even though their brain is dead, their body still wants to feed. But the thing is that they don't care what they feed on. As vampires, they only feed on humans. Like this dude is like, no, well, these creatures are feeding on both humans and vampires. But the main lead dude is starting with vampires first, because he's also like Blade. He's upset that he's a vampire, but more so because of what kind of vampire they made him. So he's trying to take out all the vampires first, and the vampire is like, "Oh, Blade, help us out, because he's gonna kill us." And he's like, that sounds like he's doing me a favor. Be like, oh, but what do you think is gonna happen once he's done with the vampires? He's obviously gonna come after the humans next. So like, best to get rid of him now before that's a problem. So like, all right, whatever. So Blade has to team up with the vampires so they can stop these new strand of vampires, and a lot of gags and funny moments happening because they don't trust each other, obviously, because they've been trained to hunt Blade, and now they gotta take orders from him, and Blade is just like dicking around with them. So it's dope. Good movie. I didn't even know, cause I know Donnie Yen was in the movie, and no, at the time when you first seen the movie, obviously, like we young, we didn't know who he was, we didn't know how dope he was. Obviously, he became Ip Man. But I was watching the movie and I saw in the credits that he actually choreographed like the fights. So nice to see that most of the fight scenes is because of him. So even though he wasn't even in the movie like that, he only had like 2 fights, and then he got killed off screen. So like, but most of the fight scenes is choreographed by him. So that was dope. Cause it was that last fight scene that was, like I said, goes back into when he was hurt, cause they were trying to drain his blood. So he got thrown into like a pool of blood to get his energy back, and this man would just start going off and just like tearing down the whole freaking team of dudes, and the man suplexed one of them and then just cut the main dude in half. I'm like, damn, this man's nice. But I like that though, and even though they were kind of like redoing the same thing in the first movie, we were like, oh, we need his blood so we can create the perfect strand of vampire, and they needed his blood in the first movie so that he can complete the ritual. Like, it was always that thing, but it was the fact that there was moments where he became vulnerable and moments where he became weak, and it was like, oh, like, he has to resort to that inner beast of him to get out of it. He has to go back to the vampire roots to get out of it. So it was dope. There was like a slight love interest story going on there. I'm glad they didn't capitalize on it because it felt kind of out there. So like I said, congrats on doing that. Like, you don't need dudes always having like these love interests that they always gotta protect or whatnot. But yeah. Then going to the third movie, the vampires felt like they had enough of Blade just hunting them down, so they needed to go to the source and basically revive the first vampire that was like ever in existence. More so that he can lead them to the way so they can be like him, because him being the first vampire as well is he also has the he's immune to basically most of the stuff that the vampires aren't. So he can be out in the sun chilling. But yeah, I saw. So the problems with that movie that I was noticing was they started to involve the people. I didn't like that because the first two movies was very underground, like, and that's why I was saying about MCU, like, how y'all gonna explain this? Because the first movie was very underground, like, we didn't know if vampires exist or not. They had their secrets, like they put their secret markers, and they have tattoos to indicate who's with who and whatnot. So like everything was underground. They didn't really involve the people like that. So the third movie, like they immediately, cause what it is that they tricked Blade into, like, he was tracking down, like he was hunting down these vampires, and one of them that he was killing turned out that he was faking being a vampire. He was actually a human, so they can get footage of him just killing a human being. And now the police is like, oh, look at Blade, he's just a maniac, he think vampire exists, he's just killing people. And it's like, bruh. And then they got us believing that, oh, they've been tracking this dude for years and whatnot. They have like this whole kickboard of like information about him. I'm like, man, it was whack because their story served no purpose. Like they literally came in the beginning when they arrested him, and then they wasn't in the movie again until the ending of the movie. It was like there was no need for us to like include like the police or the public people. Like now it's all over the news. Like stuff like that is what can branch into the MCU. Like, oh, like now someone like Doctor Strange is like, oh, what the heck? Someone is fighting vampires. Like, what? Like, now I gotta intervene because before this was like a secret, but now it's not. So I don't know. We'll see where we go with that. But yeah, the other problem with Blade was that they were trying to be too cinematic. They were trying to get too many montage shots. That was happening a lot too. And yeah, even though I don't have a problem with him, but I also noticing that like Ryan Reynolds, like every time he plays like a character in Marvel, it's like it just seems like he's been trying to like play Deadpool for the longest. Like even that character who like I don't know how he is in the comics, but his background story wise, his story sounds pretty dark, but like they just treat him like a gag character again. Like he's just always having these jokes and one-liners and whatnot. It's like, and Blade just looking at him like, bruh, like this ain't a joke. Like what we doing is serious. But yeah, I don't know. And yeah, so going into the final, when they got into the final showdown, I didn't expect this to turn to a long Blade review, but yeah. So when they got to the final showdown, they finally fought and Blade got the upper hand and whatnot. So he came to realize, because the thing about him was like one of the rumors of the reason why he like vanished, the original vampire, was because he just became disgusted with the world and like he started hating, like, cause like even he saw like, oh, y'all just out here just like making merch off a vampire. Like, nah, like he lives by an honor, he lives by a code about being true to being a vampire. Like he honors being a vampire compared to like trying to glorify it or whatnot. So that's why he felt like, yo, I don't care about what these vampires do. I don't care about these people. Like they ain't got that heart like me and you. Like he respect Blade because like you got that heart. So he was realizing like, yo, they were spending all this time like trying to recreate these new vampires and trying to perfect their form so they can be daywalkers and whatnot. He was like you was here the whole time. Like what they was trying to be like was you. Like it don't matter what happens to me, it don't happen to the vampire. Like the vampire legacy is gonna live with you no matter what, because you are us at the end of the day. So it was like he felt cool. He felt that peace dying. Now like don't matter because you're gonna carry it. So like it was dope. I like that. That was something like I didn't catch as a kid, so it was nice to watch it and see that again. But yeah, that's my little Blade trilogy review. But yeah, like I said, but going into the MCU, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what story they're gonna do. I don't know what characters they're gonna do. Like like I said, my only issue right now is just the action scenes. Like, because Wesley was really out here throwing hands, and it's like, I don't know. I need hands thrown, man. But yeah. So let's go into the next section. Let's go into my manga anime section. I actually picked up some more manga again. Well, I'm still reading the other ones, but I picked up some new ones as well. I picked up the first book because it's literally like the size of it is like freaking textbook. The Akira manga. I seen the movie. That's like a very popular movie, especially if you're an anime fan. It's a movie that came out like probably the 90s. But the manga, like the movie, like barely covers what the whole story is. That's the thing about it. Like, it just covers like the beginning of what the manga is. Like, there's actually a more story to it, and I've been hearing about it. So like, I enjoyed the movie, but I felt like even with the movies, I felt like it was a little empty. Like, there was some things missing, and clearly now that I know that the story actually does continue from there, so I'm gonna start reading that. I picked up another volume of Sweat and Soap because I realized that I pretty much read majority of the first volume. So, and that's before I bought it, because I said I started reading it digitally, but I didn't know how far I was in terms of volumes. I read majority of the first volume already. So just go on and read the second and third one. And I picked up The Golden Sheep. This one seems interesting. I like the art style of it. This seems like one of those stories of when you, well, to summarize it, it's this high schooler. She likes to play her guitar. I don't know if that has anything to do with the story, but she had to move away from the town she grew up in, but before she moved away, her and her friends like buried something in a time capsule, I guess. So she came back 7 years later, and I guess the story is gonna pick up on like what happened with her and her friends and how they're gonna reunite and whatnot, and what's been going on for the past 7 years. So I'm interested in reading that. But also, as I was saying, also I have my other mangas. I started reading Jujutsu Kaisen and whatnot. But before I do that, one thing I do notice that are the perks of like reading the actual physical manga, like owning them, is that the artist or the author actually sometimes, depending on the manga, be giving you like extra information that you normally don't get anywhere, which is dope. Cause I was getting that in Jujutsu Kaisen, like they was like he was giving out a lot of information on the characters, the ages and whatnot, and then explaining like the abilities, because some of the abilities wasn't like, every shonen anime manga got those things, like there's ki in Dragon Ball Z, there's the chakra in Naruto, so there's different things that explains their power. So in Jujutsu Kaisen, for the most part, I know that's like your curse energy is like how they use their power. But it still sounds, I don't know, it sounds dumb. My thing with Jujutsu Kaisen, well, it's been my thing for a lot of shonen anime. Like, I've been slowly not liking shonen anime because, I mean, it's made for teenagers. Like, that's the whole point of like shonen. Like, they do all the tropes, like high school students, usually over-sexualizing females sometimes, depending on the shonen. And power-ups and friendships and all of that. Like, sometimes it's cool, but it's like I like having. It's the same thing with it was the same thing when I first started watching anime. My first anime, it was obviously Dragon Ball Z, I watched Yu Yu Hakusho a little bit. I never finished it, but I started with that, and One Piece, Naruto, Bleach. Like, oh, all these fighting anime. Like, yeah, cool. And then I watched Death Note, and I was like, hold on. Like, you mean there's something you can do aside from just fighting all the time? Like, you can outsmart each other and have dope, dark, intricate plots. I was like, okay, it's amazing. So I started going down the rabbit hole, like watching different anime genres and whatnot. Like, yeah. So like, I definitely like reading like my manga, watching anime with like more substance and then like having more story. Sometimes I do need to get some fighting, like, yeah, but the stories that makes the fighting happen and all that be dull. And that's kind of my bone to pick with Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm like, for me, as I just started reading it, I'm surprised that it got past the first volume, because this manga is very weak in the beginning. Like, it has all of those crappy tropes that I kind of don't like. Like, it was kind of one of the reasons also I stopped. Not exactly the reason, but one of the reasons why I watched Seven Deadly Sins, and I watched like the first 3 episodes and I dropped it because I don't like that dull main character. Like, it was nothing, like it had no purpose for me to watch this story. Like, he was so dull. And same thing with this one. Like, I ain't care for this main character. Like, oh, he was just a normal kid, and it just so happened that he's just naturally gifted at everything, so he's just gonna harness his powers to become OP. I'm like, it don't feel right. It's kind of why I didn't like Naruto towards the end, because they kind of retconned the whole point of his story. Like, Naruto was the underdog. Like, everything he had to do, everything he gained, he worked hard for it. That was like his story. But then it was like, oh, it's in his blood, it's his fate, it's his destiny for him to be cold because he's a descendant of this person. And I'm like, bruh, like I need that growth. So that's I'm gonna keep reading it, but because I heard that it does get good. So like, I'm like, you gotta get past the formula, the shonen formula that's on the beginning. Cause I already see that they're already doing like a tournament arc, which I love tournament arcs. Like, that's it's like my weak point in shonen. That's why I love Yu Yu Hakusho, like, cause almost damn near every arc was a tournament. But yeah, so we already getting a tournament arc. But we gonna see where it goes. But I'm definitely not as excited about it as everyone has made it out to be, which is the reason why I dropped My Hero Academia, because it did not live up to the excitement that everyone was giving it out to be. So yeah. Also, I started reading Blood on the Tracks, which I am mad. I hate when so where I mainly get my manga from is Barnes and Nobles. Because there isn't really much other places around here where I'm at. So I'm probably going to like order them online. But I hate when they have like one volume, or they have multiple volumes but not in proper order. So I started reading Blood on the Tracks, and I was gonna go and pick up the next volume, like the next 2 volumes. And for whatever reason, they skipped the next 2 volumes. So in the store, there's only the first one, then it goes straight to 4 or 5. I'm like, bro, like, how y'all selling stuff like this? But that's annoying. So I'm gonna have to like order. I don't want to read it digitally. I actually wanted to own this one. But that is from the first volume is very interesting. I mean, I still don't 100% see where they kind of going with it, but you got the gist of it. So kind of the story is that the main character, the main boy, has like his mother seems to be very overprotective of him. And obviously we do not know why yet, so that's why there's still more to this, but she's very overprotective of him, and she's like very like overly loving of him, constantly like, no, it's like the very positive mother, I guess, but to him it seemed like she's just being a mother, but like his cousins and other family members start pointing it out, like, oh, your mom is very overprotective, man. So we don't know the situation of why, but there was like a family trip that happens, and they were kind of like teasing the mom about being overprotective. Like they kind of like did like a kind of prank on her just so they can prove it. But it was weird, and then it got dark. I'm not gonna say what happens, but I am interested in reading the rest of it. But yeah, so that's my little manga section. And before I end it, I want to give my appreciation, my love to One Piece. And I don't want to be the person like, oh, you know, you gotta watch this, you gotta read this, or whatever. The only thing I say is that I feel bad for people who don't give One Piece a chance, because of the whole, oh, it's too long, it's too many episodes, too many chapters, blah blah blah. And I don't know. Some people also say that it starts slow. In my opinion, it kind of don't. But I don't know, man. I really feel sorry for people who ain't into One Piece, man. Like, that is... Because as much as the odds was against me on keeping up with One Piece, because, mind you, when One Piece kind of got popping over here, it was sadly because of the 4Kids dub, which censored, like, 50% of the show. Like, like the fact that the main government force in the show is called the Marines, and the anime they even censored that, and I think they called them the Navy or whatever. Like, they changed that. They don't hold guns, they hold super soakers. They replace things or digitally alter things so that whoever the character was originally supposed to be doing, they not doing. I'm like, oh god. And the voice acting is just so that obviously flopped. Like, I think the 4Kids dub made it up to like Alabasta, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Skype here, and that's the Skype is like the drop off for like everybody. So I'm gonna get into that in a second. But yeah, and then I think the 4Kids died out, and then Toonami, Adult Swim, whatever, Funimation finally did their own dub, like a proper representation of how the show actually sounds and how it looks. They didn't censor a lot of stuff. But again, like, every time they get to Skype, it just drops off right there. They've been dubbing it on the low, like digitally. But actually, this before I even knew about watching anime online or whatever. So every time I've been catching up with One Piece, every time it gets to Skype, the show drops. I drop the show there too, because I didn't know there's any other way to watch it. So in my eyes, I'm thinking One Piece is like canceled. Maybe it's like, you know, America just don't want nothing to do with it, so it's just strictly a Japanese thing now. So like, if you want to watch that, you're gonna have to watch Japanese. But I didn't know anything about subs or whatever. That wasn't until I started watching Naruto. And I'm like, oh. And then when I did like research about One Piece, like to see where they was at, I was confused on a lot of the stuff, because like I said, when you first watched it was the 4Kids version, so it was very child friendly how they portrayed the show. You didn't know how deep and dark and serious stuff was. So when I was seeing certain things, I was like, bro, this don't seem like the One Piece I know. So like, whatever, I still like held off on it. But like I said, once I started like doing my whole anime research and whatever, and started watching more anime, I decided to give One Piece a shot again, because I was in my senior year in high school, and for the most part, we don't really get homework like that, because, you know, it's the end of the school year. The main important thing is just the test. So I had a lot of downtime at the school. So I started back up from the first episode and watched the whole thing all the way through to where it was at, which nicely for me, the time skip had just happened when I got back into One Piece. So it was nice to see like, oh, I watched this whole pre-time skip journey, and when I caught up, now we in the time skip. Like, oh, so now we here. Now we seeing what they're gonna do now. Like, so I was watching this growth, and then when I got to college, I was like, I think I caught up in the anime, but then it was like that waiting for every week. I was like, oh, I can't do it. So you know what? I'm gonna start reading the manga. So I started reading the manga. The manga was just finishing Punk Hazard, so I didn't even see Punk Hazard. I watched it when they caught up to an anime, and I just went from there, and it was just Rosa, which at the time was like the longest arc. Like literally, I did my entire college on just Rosa, but it was amazing. There are a lot of stuff that happened in that arc. And then here we are now in Wano. Like, arc is amazing too. I mean, for an anime to be going this long, and for the most part be so consistent, and like how great the show is, how great the manga is, like the storytelling, the world building is just amazing. Like to keep track of so much stuff for so long, it's like dope. And like I said, I don't know, man. Like, I really do feel some way for people who don't give One Piece a chance or just gave up on it. But like I was saying, like, cause Skypiea is usually the arc that does it, because that arc is very slow starting. It builds up very slowly, but the thing about that arc is that it has a lot of information, like stuff that's still happening, like currently in the anime and the manga, was brought up in Skypiea. So like that arc is very pivotal in terms of storytelling. It just starts so slow, and that's where a lot of people drop off at. So I feel like Skypiea is a great point for people who's like, yo, if you really like this anime, you really like this manga, you will keep going past this. And like I said, unfortunately, I didn't know how to find anime at the time, but I definitely would have kept on going. But for me, I kept on dropping that Skypiea. And which sucks, because even though this anime arc, because it's a non-filler arc, my favorite One Piece arc is a non-canon filler arc. It's the arc right after Skypiea when they land directly into a marine base, and that whole arc is like the epitome of what One Piece is to me. Like the adventure, going against some mischief, everyone having their little side stories, getting into turmoil, having their backs against the wall, and then they breaking out of it, and just like the skin of their teeth, they managed to get right through and surpass everything. Like everything about that entire arc is amazing, and only to find out that it wasn't even real. It's not canon. So yeah, I don't know. One Piece is amazing. One thing I do gotta say is, I don't know who's in charge of it or what going on, but when it comes to One Piece video games, y'all annoying, because y'all act like y'all don't know how to make video games whenever One Piece is involved. The first One Piece game that kind of like came over to America was the Grand Adventure franchise, which took the 4Kids dub version of One Piece and made it a video game. So obviously that game is gonna be very arcadey and childish. Like the character models look like chibi version of themselves. I'm like, bro, what is this? And then, of course, when Naruto came over and they got Ultimate Ninja, the first Ultimate Ninja game, like that was solid. Oh, like what the heck? And obviously Dragon Ball Z, when they got the first Budokai, that was solid. The second one, and then after the third one, they were like, all right, we ain't gonna mess up no more. And the third one, Led Tenkaichi, of course, was amazing. And here we are now with Fighters, which I feel is kind of the perfected formula for any anime fighting games at this point. I think most anime games should follow this formula. I don't know why, because Demon Slayer recently came out with their game, and for some reason they just basically copied and pasted the Naruto formula and just added the Demon Slayer skins. So that game, in my opinion, is not good because I don't like the Storm formula as it kept on progressing. Mainly the second one was amazing, but even that was broken. But it was tolerable. But One Piece games is a mess. Then they did the Pirate Warriors game. I was hyped for that game because it was like, oh, finally we getting like it's finally like coming to America again. Like honestly, there's a lot of One Piece games that kept on happening, but it was Japan only. So like, oh, we finally getting the game coming back here again, and unfortunately, it was so like under the radar that it never got a physical release. It was digital only. You had to buy it in the PlayStation store, and it was exclusive to PlayStation. That was the next thing. So like, if you didn't have a PlayStation and you didn't check the store, some people probably didn't even know that game existed. But it seems to have done well enough that we got 4 of them, so that's good. But and then even that, they changed the formula after the first one, which I didn't like, because the first one I liked the adventure aspect of it. Like they made the game feel more immersive. Like there was like small, like, I don't want to say they were platforming, but like there was like, to One Piece standards, they were flat platforming. Like, oh, press X and Luffy would stretch his arm there and he would jump to the next platform. Like it was one of those things. But that, and then the boss fights, they had QTEs in them, which it worked for One Piece. It was amazing for One Piece, and for whatever reason they took it out after that, and they just made the game straight up like Dynasty Warriors, which that's the formula it was. But I like that it had its own charm in the first one. Then the second one, it was like, nah, we're just gonna make it a straight up beat 'em up game. So now you just run around and just fight hordes of enemies and beat up the boss and then go to the next level. It's like, it's not impactful as it once was. But yeah. And then we got 2 other franchises. The Unlimited Red one, which I also say, what's the one that just came out? What was that one? Let me see. It was Unlimited Red, and there was another one, World Seeker. I don't think it's directly like tied together, but you can see in the gameplay and how it works that it's like a spiritual successor to that game. Like it's a slight open world adventure game. It's like more linear compared to like not linear, more open compared to like Pirate Warriors. Pirate Warriors is like, hey, you're just in this map and you just fighting everyone. This one's like, oh, you explore and do stuff. Which the next One Piece game is One Piece Odyssey, which looks like it's just another spiritual successor to World Seeker. And then they finally went back into fighting and gave us Burning Blood, which was a broken mess, because whoever made that game, I don't know, they just don't know how One Piece work, because there's no like, every game usually have like a dodge mechanic, some kind of way to evade combo so you won't just sit there and keep getting swept. But it's like staying true to the lore of the franchise. So like in Naruto, you know, there's the substitution jutsu. Dragon Ball Z, you know, teleportation. One Piece, there's really not that. There's some people who got abilities that can evade stuff, but for the people who don't got abilities, what can they do? And I feel like they didn't properly research that. So a lot of characters can spam techniques. That's another thing. There's like no meter or whatever. They can spam techniques and you can't dodge them because there's no proper dodge mechanic in the game. So yeah, that wasn't good. So I don't know what's going on. Like they need to stop treating One Piece like it's weak out here in America. Like I don't know, like One Piece is goated, and Americans acting like they don't know what the hell a good anime is. But yeah, that's my little appreciation for One Piece. I was not expecting to be going this far into all of this, but here we are. My last section is the music section. This one kind of gonna be short. As I think I mentioned in the last episode, Kendrick album was coming out and now it has dropped. Like I said, I'm not gonna be too long on this one because I only listened to it once. And I think that's the thing with Kendrick albums, with me and Kendrick albums, like, I think you can tell how good or how promising it can be for me, depending on how quickly I can return to it. When I listened to Damn the first time, I literally did not listen to it again for like a year. And then I finally came back and listened to it again. And it's a decent album. In my opinion, I rank it the least of my favorites. But this one, I've only listened to it once. And the only reason why I don't want to listen to it again because of how depressing the album is. And that was kind of the reason why I didn't want to listen to Pimp a Butterfly the first time. Because the first time I listened to it, like, musically, it sounded depressing. I didn't like it. It would make me feel bad. Like, it gave me like a bad feeling inside when I listened to Pimp Butterfly the first time. So, but I came back to Pimp Butterfly quickly though. Like, it was like a few months, and I picked it back up and I heard it, and it sounded different to me because I guess I was like in a different mindset in my life. And I'm like, oh, this sounds completely different to what I first heard. So, I don't know. But this one thing I give Kendrick credit for, which I feel like the title of the name, even though if it has a different meaning, in my opinion, is fitting because Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, like, I like the idea of the title representing that it's not just him, it's him and all the other stuff that helps. Because one thing I give Kendrick credit on is that not just Kendrick himself, but everyone that's involved with his albums, like the engineers, the mixers, the producers, everything that goes into making the album. It's like Kendrick needs it. And I feel like he got very, very blessed with his team because they help him make a fantastic project. Because if it was just a regular sounding put these beats together and I'm a rap over them thing, I don't know, it wouldn't be working. I don't think we'd be talking about Kendrick like that. But it's how it's everything, it's all the little things, the talking, all the skits, the stuff that he puts in the beginning, the instrumentations, the beats, how it sounds, like everything sounds very crisp and clear, like nothing don't sound too like some songs, like you can tell, like, oh, they didn't properly mix this well. Like everything is like nicely mixed and nicely done. And I give credit to like the whole machine behind Kendrick. That's why I don't give Kendrick himself too many props, because Kendrick as a rapper solo by himself, to me, he's alright. I know that probably might piss a lot of people off. Like, he has his moments where he's like, oh, that was dope. Then he has his moments where it's like, all right, that was cool. But, you know, my favorite rappers exist, and there's a reason why they are above him, type thing. But yeah, at the moment, my favorite songs on that album is Purple Heart and Mr. Morale. More specifically for Ghostface verse on Purple Heart, that was amazing. But Mr. Morale, that's what I felt like that was like his version of, what's that song by Kanye? Is it Black Skinhead? I feel like that was like his version of that song. That was amazing. The other songs was dope. Then, like I said, the topics, depressing. I wasn't in the mood to be depressed, man. So I need some time to like now that I know that it's there, now I need to prepare myself to like be in that mode to listen to the album. So I'll probably give it another listen and see how I feel about it again. But that's my thing. And some more appreciation. So Logic, which I do not follow Logic at all, so I don't know much about Logic, but the last time I heard about Logic, he retired from rapping. So lo and behold, there's an album drop. I don't know how long he been active since he retired. I don't follow him. The only reason why I know this album exists is because one of my favorite rappers, Blue, been promoting the album because he has a verse on one of the songs. And man, I love Blue. Yeah. So I did, like I said, I want to give my little appreciation to Blue as well. If y'all don't know about Blue, Blue is a West Coast rapper who dropped this classic album in 2007, and just, he's just been chilling for the most part, which is funny because XXL freshman list, the first freshman cover list, I think came out in 2007. I don't know when they made the list compared to when his album dropped, but timing wise, well, no. Just comparing the years together, obviously you would say Blue should have been in that list of the first ever freshman list, but he wasn't. And they skipped 2008 because I guess they didn't think that they would keep doing that list or whatever, or maybe there just wasn't no good rappers in 2008, I don't know. But they skipped 2008 and went straight to 2009 after that, and Blue was on that, which, like I said, it felt weird because he dropped his album in 2007, and it's like, yeah, I made him like, oh, he's the next guy up. 2 years later, I'm like, bruh, he already dropped this. That's like Nas dropping Illmatic when he first came out, and then 2 years later, hey guys, check out this Nas. And it's like, bruh. But yeah, I don't know, Blue's amazing. Blue for me, he helped me deal with my emotions and deal with my perspective and how I see things. Like before, I was listening to music mainly in high school, mainly towards the end of my high school, to deal with my sadness and my anger. Like I needed to listen to stuff that was like that. And then when I got into Blue, it was like, you know, there's songs that he's like, there's a song called Fly. I think it's called Fly Liberation, or the Song of Liberation, something like that. And he raps from 3 verses from the first perspective of a single mother with 2 kids who like living in a 1 bedroom, and she's barely like, you know, being able to afford to survive with them. But at the end of the song, he's like, oh, and then he compares and he's like, no, I see that she's out here doing what she gotta do to make her money, and then I'm realizing that my life ain't that crap. Like I can't be complaining about my life, and here she is doing what she gotta do with what little she has. And so he like, yo, I asked her how she deals with it. She said she doesn't. She let God deal with it. Like, damn. So that's where I started reconnecting my faith in God as well during my college years and all of that. Like having more faith in him and not blaming no more, but like having more faith and acceptance and just being more cool about my situation in life and what's going on in my life. Like, I can't keep stressing over everything that I'm not in control of, or things that I feel like, oh, like, why me? Why this? And there's people who's in worse situations who's probably not even complaining. Like, they just like, no, I gotta do what I gotta do. So, yeah, man, Blue is just amazing. I haven't not listened to Blue, especially Below the Heavens. But even recently, he dropped Miles. I don't know what to tell y'all. But Blue is amazing. Just want to give my little flowers to him. And I guess I want to give myself a little plug. I also been working on my music group project, my little rap album, whatever. And I am almost done with it. For the most part, I'm almost done with it. So that's going to be coming out soon. Probably, I'm thinking the latest, probably July. If I feel generous, maybe June, but it might be a July release. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so we're gonna go into our topics. Here we are, an hour later. We finally gonna get into our topics. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, so sometimes I have short episodes, sometimes I don't. I don't know, but yeah. So this one, these are more topics of. I just wanted to, I guess, start conversation. It's not so much of me just talking and giving out my feedback and my opinions and my thoughts. But I want to bring up the topic of trigger warnings. The reason why I want to talk about this is how, just thinking of the idea, because this also ties into my second topic conversation as well, which is generational perspective of issues and mental health stuff and whatnot. So the concept of trigger warning, the first time I really heard words like being triggered or whatever was kind of in high school. And I'm just sitting here thinking of how normal that word has become now. That's some people literally put those in disclaimers or in their titles, or trigger warning for this. If you can't handle this stuff or whatever. And I'm it makes me question damn, what has become of our society that it's gotten so normal. I mean, it's gotten so normal that now it is trigger warning. It's I can't before I speak on certain things, I need to warn you that if you dealt with this and something that you haven't handled yet, just excuse yourself out the room or stop listening to this podcast or whatever the situation is. It's I don't know. Well, like I said, I've as I mentioned earlier, in the beginning of the podcast, we just dealt with the recent shootings and whatnot. I don't know. As a society, before I even not even breaking into what's going on into race and all of that, but as a whole, what is it are we the generation that's finally speaking up? Is that what it is? That it's we've been through so much, there's so much that can bother us now, and we need to be aware of other people, so we need to give our warnings before we even speak on things. But my also thing is I feel people need to, I don't know, people we do need to get to a point where we can start talking about these things, and for us to have these conversations and not be disturbed and bothered by it. Because if it's really bothering you that bad, it's we need to work it out. We can't hide behind trigger warnings. Not to say that your feelings aren't valid or whatever. People aren't trying to I'm talking about self-harm, but maybe it's a deep topic that someone don't want to hear about, but I didn't give the trigger warning, so they just listen to my podcast and just start getting disturbed, and I'm oh, and then it's now I'm the bad guy. But it's mainly my podcast, I said, I want to create conversation, because people need to, we all need to start dealing with our stuff. We need to overcome our trauma, the generational trauma. That was also one thing that was brought up in Kendrick's album, the generational curse and the generational trauma of the sexual abuse between the Black families and households. Sometimes it's not certain people who's doing things to us. It's like it be your own relatives that's hurting you, and that goes along. I know there's always the common joke of Alabama or whatever. Usually the common joke is that this happens against white families, but I feel like because black people, like, we're not really allowed to speak out aloud. I don't know, we've been conditioned to feel that we can't speak out aloud because we feel like the world think our feelings are invalid. So not knowing that it's possible, but that the whole family sexual assault thing could be more common in our family than white families, and we just, since we don't talk about it, it's not looked that way. So we sit there and joke about it with others, like, oh, when someone say something like that, oh, play Sweet Home Alabama, and it's like, oh, but it's like not knowing that this could be happening in your family and you don't know it. And like I said, there's a lot that, I don't know, as a generation or as a society today that we just need to get over. But this also comes into my second topic of, when I was saying generation, because I see these beams a couple of times where it's like they do the whole generation comparison, like, oh, kids in the 80s, like, oh, they hit themselves and they just like brush it off. Kids in the 90s, they hit themselves, they get angry about it, but they know still keep moving. And then like kids in the 2000s, they hit themselves and they just have a whole meltdown and they feel like they dying or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, like, what message is that, I guess, portraying to us as well? Like, is it the whole, like, all right, so let's put it this way, like, is it us becoming more soft and more vulnerable to things? Like I said, because the concept of the videos that they all are getting hurt by the same thing. Like, you stub your toe, no matter which generation it is, we all stub our toe. But this generation is like, we stub our toe and we feel like it's the end of the world, compared to, the 80s, someone stubbed their toe and it's like, oh, all right, that hurts, keep pushing. So it's like, why have we gotten to the point where it seems like the things that, I guess, probably didn't bother some people back then bother us now? And like, that goes back into my what I said before, like, are we finally just deciding that it always probably had bothered us, but because of where we were in that time period, like I said, because of our background, talking about it and expressing it wasn't really something that we were supposed to do, or we didn't have the quote unquote luxury of doing. Like, we wasn't allowed to complain. But now that we kind of are in a more space that we can voice our frustrations and our concerns and our opinions about things, that a lot of people are now becoming more vocal about what's bothering them, and we realizing that there's a lot of things that's bothering us as a society. And the question is, like I said, what, like, as a whole race and as a whole society, like, what is it that's gonna make us finally, when we gonna get into the next generation where, like, oh, like, we finally got over our hurdles and we are no longer being like, we know how to voice our opinions, but at the same time, we know how to deal with it as well. Like, something hurt us, yeah, it hurts, but now what are we gonna do about it? Like, we can't just keep walking past the issue and let the next generation get hurt by the same thing that y'all got hurt by. It's like, the whole point is that y'all all keep getting hurt by the same thing, but as time goes on, we just reacting to it differently. When are we gonna stop letting ourselves get hurt by the same thing over and over, is what I'm saying. Granted, the school shootings, like, how many times this constantly happen, and how many times, I work in a job where I visit like schools and whatnot, and I see that there was like a shooting like a few months ago, and even that changed, like, to now, like, cops like have to like post outside of schools, and they make daily like walks. I'll be watching them, like they will like do regular like walks, and they yank on each door to make sure that they're all locked so nobody can just walk in there. So it's like, what more can we keep doing? Like, why isn't that being more normal around everywhere? Like, we need to have more security, more precautions to these things and whatnot, so that it won't keep happening, and it won't keep being a generational thing, and it won't be to some people who'd be memeing it, oh, well, here's the quiet kid in school. Like, no, like there shouldn't be no more quiet kids in school, whatever. Like, that was my thing I mentioned like a few episodes ago too. Like, we school also needs to have more classes to help kids learn how to become themselves and be more open with who they are before they get into the next stage in their school life and their next actual life. Like, we need to help mold the generation so that we know who we are by the time we get to a certain point, so that now it's like we're just taking care of our business. Like, there's still people that's my age or older than me, or just a little younger than me, who still don't know who the hell they are, and they still going through things. So it's like, it shouldn't be that way. But yeah, that's my little, I don't know, conversation starter, I guess. But yeah, I think that's gonna be all for me. I'm kind of getting a little headache. I've been talking a while. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me in this episode today. I forgot to write. I wrote all of these topics down or whatever, and I forgot to write a question. Oh man. Let's just go into what I just talked about. The question for the day is, what do you guys feel should be done so that we can move forward in the next generation, where we're not constantly hurt by the same things over and over. We're not constantly traumatized from the same thing over and over, so we won't have to deal with things like trigger warnings and whatnot. Like, we shouldn't be warned about everything just because we haven't dealt with everything. Like, just generalizing it. I didn't want to, but yeah, like, what do you guys think we should be doing, like, so that we can move forward as a whole society and as a whole species and whatnot? Because there's a lot going on, and all of our personal individual issues aren't, we need to think large about everything that's going on. So yeah. But that's it. Again, if you guys enjoyed this podcast and you guys enjoyed everything that happens, please be sure to share and rate this podcast. Again, my condolences to the victims and the families who had to suffer the recent shootings and all of that. And yeah, see you guys. Have a great day and a great week. Until next time, peace.